Welcome, everyone, to the Union Federation podcast, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This is Union Federation episode 215. My name is Kevin. I'll be one of your hosts. This is the Orville crew profile, and we'll be discussing Isaac, played by Mark Jackson. And I will let you guys know, of course, this is Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And go ahead and hit our QR code there. If you're watching the video, take us straight to the website there. We also can be found on the BQN. But I'd like to introduce my crew for this mission. Really excited about this. With me, as always, is Amy from the BQN. What's going on?
Well, hello. Oh my gosh, so excited for today. These crew profiles have just been wonderful.
They have been. And you threw us a curve. We'll get to that in a second. But Amy, of course, is our first officer and counselor and founder of the BQN. But we also want to get in my co-captain and security and weapons officer, Mr. Kyle Wagner. How are you, sir?
I have escaped Planet Taxium, which I believe now is a subsidiary of Kalon. But I do have my attack triple here with me, and I am ready for the episode.
Awesome. I'm really excited for that. But I'm actually really excited to share with our audience here, both on the audio and, of course, on YouTube. Make sure you check us out on the Fandom Podcast Network. Check out the Orville there. Please welcome our special guest ambassador, Alyssa Courtright. What's up, Alyssa?
Hi. Thank you for having me. Good. How are you?
Okay, now first of all, what I like about having you here is that you reached out to us first. Tell us a little bit, first of all, how you found us.
I'm a member of the Orville Facebook group, and you have been posting every week all the different crew profiles, and I love the Orville and all the different characters and their arcs and watching them progress all through the 3 seasons. So I thought this was really cool, and I've listened to all of them. So
that's fantastic. And now, Alyssa, tell us, give us a little brief history of your Orville fandom.
Okay, so I found the Orville when it went to Disney Plus, so I did not see it when it was coming on Fox or anything like that. I saw it when it was on Disney Plus. I think they had probably just put everything on there. I was looking for something to watch because I was in Florida. I was on the Disney College program at the time, and we were getting ready to be hit with a pretty big hurricane. So I wanted to download something that I could watch and just like have on my iPad in case the power went out. And I found that, and I started watching it. And yeah, I really liked it. The first couple episodes, I was kind of like, I don't know if this show is for me. And then I got hooked by the third one. So
we talked about that. Yes, that third episode. Yeah, about a girl that kind of changed everything. It's funny when I remember when the Orville hit Disney Plus, we really wanted to make sure that the streaming numbers were high. I remember going to work. I had Disney Plus going on here in this room, in my bedroom, in the living room. I made sure it was streaming in every room just so the streaming numbers were high. Although I don't know if it really counted. I think it just count one household. So
yeah, I didn't know who Seth MacFarlane was. I had never seen Star Trek. I saw the plot line, and it said something like that there was a captain, and he found out that his ex-wife was going to be his first officer. And I was like, oh, that sounds very dramatic and interesting and something that I would want to watch. And then I turned it on, watched the first scene, and I was like, I don't know that I like this because I actually don't like characters who cheat. And then I paused it, and then I was like, well, actually, I want to see where this goes. And so I kept watching, and yeah, got very attached to it. It's my favorite show now. So
that's so cool. I love that. That's a great story. Well, like we mentioned, we are discussing the Orville, and this is part of the limited 10-episode series for the Orville here. And of course, we are discussing this episode of Isaac, Mark Jackson. Now, Amy, you threw us a little bit of a curveball here, and I wanted you to kind of just give us a brief explanation why. And what I mean is, normally for these episodes, what we do is we pick 2 episodes to talk about the character, and then we'll kind of sometimes mention honorable mention. And the 2 episodes that we were going to discuss is Identity Part 1, Identity Part 2, and the honorable mention was going to be from Unknown Graves, Season 3, Episode 7. But what did you tell me, Amy?
Yeah, after watching Unknown Graves, I was like, we have to discuss Isaac getting emotions, that feeling. And I could not imagine not talking about as in depth as we do with the synopsis, with the trivia, with the discussion on how this episode informs us about the character. an honorable mention was not enough. So you graciously okay. So thank you.
We made adjustments to the notes in the slideshow. No problem there, because Amy, you're absolutely right. That'll be a good discussion to talk about that. So yeah. And of course, previously here on the Union Federation, we have been doing these episodes of all the crew members. Of course, the first one we did was Lara Katan, followed by Talakiali, Lieutenant Commander John Lamar, Lieutenant Gordon Malloy, Lieutenant Commander Bortis, and we just recently did Dr. Claire Finn. I wanted to ask you, Alyssa, out of these 6 that we've done, was there one that jumped out to you for any particular discussion?
Oh, I don't know. I've liked all of them. It's kind of hard to say. I like that you explore how the characters change and grow and how they're all so different from each other. So yeah, I don't know that there was one in particular. I've just enjoyed listening to all of them.
What I was kind of curious too is when Amy and I were working on these notes, we chose the episodes that would go to each of these characters, but it was, some of them were kind of tough, some of them were kind of easy, but I'm sure there are some episodes that we left out of some of these characters that we could have discussed, but it was still fun to go through that process. So, yeah.
Oh, the one thing I forgot to tell you, when I was listening to them and you would go and say who the next character was that you were going to talk about and what their episodes were, I would try and guess what the episodes would be that you would pick. And I was almost always right.
Nice.
Great minds. Great minds.
I love that. Yes. That is awesome. Well, of course, we're discussing Isaac and following, and you'll join us next week on this as well, Alyssa. We're going to be having a conversation about Kelly Grayson, played by Adrian Palicki, and then we're going to have Ed Mercer, and then we're going to round out our series. Our final series episode of the series is going to be the Orville crew profile, all those reoccurring guest stars and Star Trek alumni. So we're going to have a lot of fun going over that as well. So, and then also 2 on Union Federation. If you haven't caught them already, we did our take on Section 31, reaction to the movie. We also talked about the last season of Star Trek Lower Decks. And last year we had a fun limited podcast on Star Trek Next Generation, where we covered all of the really famous 2-part episodes, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go ahead and get into our first Orville shuttle mission and talk about Isaac with our character here. So we'll get right into it. All right. So Isaac, guys, here we go. Isaac was a Kaylon emissary to the Planetary Union and Science Engineering Officer aboard USS Orville. He was likely the ship's chief science officer, though this was never explicitly stated. Unlike the other officers in the ship, Isaac was not a member of the Union. For most of his career, Isaac worked as a representative of the Kaylon on a provisionary commission to the Union. He briefly deactivated in January 2421 during the Battle of Earth and resigned his commission upon reactivation. Isaac continued to serve on the bridge of the Orville, but was never officially recommissioned as a Union officer. Isaac was fascinated by the cultures and experiences of biological life. He had a brief, if tumultuous, relationship with Dr. Claire Finn from mid-2420 until his betrayal of the Planetary Union in early 2421, which was later rekindled after Claire forgave him for his actions. Isaac's actions in the Battle of Earth left him alienated, despised by the crew, and he eventually committed suicide. Deliberate self-deactivation in early 2422. He was reactivated by Ensign Charlie Burke, and his suicide led to a softening of the crew's attitude towards him. Charlie and Isaac later developed a weapon capable of destroying the Kaylon. That device was directly responsible for peace with the Kaylon. Isaac participated in a successful battle against the Krill-Moclan Alliance. Shortly after, Isaac married Claire. I want to get you guys' opening character discussion, and I want to start with our guest here. Alyssa, I want to get your thoughts on Isaac going into this. So what are your thoughts on Isaac?
I like that even though he claims he doesn't have emotions and he insists to no end that he can't feel pain, he can't feel love, he can't feel happiness or anything like that, that he does still express all of that in his own way, even before he gets emotions from unknown graves. And in spite of the fact that he's not supposed to be emotional, he also really wants people to like him. And he wants friends. And he consistently, he keeps trying to get Charlie's attention and want her to be his friend, even when she's made it very clear that she's not interested. So I thought that was very interesting about him.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Mm.
Amy, what say you? What are your first opening remarks about Isaac are?
Yeah. Well, for me, coming from the TNG world, like that is my data. And we are going to learn about humanity through this character, Isaac. And I like the little twist that Seth MacFarlane has thrown in to differentiate him from data. But Mark Jackson, sorry, excuse me. I am in love with his acting and how even through he is completely covered in this Isaac suit, his character is so endearing and I get so much emotion from listening to him and his logic and how his logic still shows compassion for his crewmates. It's really a brilliant character.
Yeah, I agree with those points. If you're watching the video, by the way, we have a slideshow here showing the comparison of what Isaac looked like in season 1 and how he got kind of an upgrade in season 2 through season 3. Kyle, your opening remarks on Isaac.
One of the more surprising characters, I think, of the Orville. He could have so easily been a one-note character, kind of just a data ripoff, and yet they did some of the most complex storytelling with him, and it was shocking. I mean, I did not see this character going the direction they took him, and especially in the episodes we're going to be talking about tonight. Yeah, it again, the Orville always surprising with its characters, and what a brilliant job they did with Isaac.
This is true. I love the arc that we've seen with him. So definitely. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Admiral's Log episode synopsis for Identity Part 1. Amy?
All righty. Well, when Isaac shuts down, the crew head to his home planet to fix him and uncover a shocking secret that was better off hidden. After Isaac collapses and becomes inert, the Orville travels to his home world, Kalon 1, hoping he can be revived. Mercer also wants to learn whether the Kalons have decided to join the Planetary Union. The Kalons explain that Isaac was deactivated because his mission aboard the Orville was completed. Reactivated, Isaac informs the crew he is remaining on Kalon 1. Before departing, the Orville crew have a surprise farewell party for Isaac. While the Kalons continue deliberations about joining the Union, the Orville detects large-scale weapons on Kalon 1. While searching for Isaac on Kalon 1, Dr. Finn's son Ty accidentally discovers one of many subterranean chambers containing billions of humanoid remains. It emerges that the Kalons killed their biological creators for enslaving them despite knowing they had evolved into sentient beings, and that Isaac's true mission aboard the Orville was to evaluate whether biological Union species were worth preserving. The Kalons need to expand their population beyond Kalon 1 and have decided they are unable to coexist with Union populations. They violently commandeer the Orville and head for Earth, accompanied by a fleet of the earlier discovered weapons. Now, the idea for Identity came during production of season 1, originally intended to be the finale, but was tabled for season 2 to allow more character development. The writing team wanted an episode for the fans where Isaac would suddenly betray those who cared about him aboard the ship. Now, Identity Part 1 currently holds a rating of 9.4 on IMDb, nearly a full point higher than any preceding episode. However, the episode performed only average in terms of live audiences, watched live by 3.05 million American viewers. And the professional critics also recognized Identity Part 1 as a watershed moment. Alejandro Rojas of Den of Geek gave the episode 4 stars and called it brilliant, hilarious, and hugely entertaining. He continues, "This was a great episode, and I look forward to seeing what happens."
So before we go on, I know we've talked about our thoughts on this, and we'll get deeper into it again, of course, talking about Isaac. But Alyssa, I did want to go to you with our guest here. When you watched this episode for the first time, did it remind you of anything? Did it catch you off? I just wanted to get your first reactions to this episode.
So it didn't exactly catch me off guard because I spoil things for myself, and I didn't know like what this full episode was going to be. But I had seen like people's comments about the Orville, and I knew something was going to happen with Isaac. I didn't know what, but I knew he was going to betray them in some way. So it didn't really catch me off guard. But still, it was an amazing episode. It was really, really cool, and to see like the cliffhanger and to be continued. Of course, I didn't. People who watched it live had to wait till the next week. I didn't. I could watch the next one right away. So I had that advantage. But now looking at the AI and the robots coming out, and I'm like, okay, that's the Kalon. That's a little bit scary. So more so
Yeah.
what's happening now reminds me of that episode.
I remember having to wait that whole week. Kyle, you remember that too, Amy?
Oh, we were all kind of
Yes.
like, oh, really? Still wasn't as bad as waiting for the best of both worlds, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I did have to mention, though, before we go into the trivia for this episode, was that the what was it? Oh God, I almost forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, I'll come back to it. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and get into some episode trivia here. Amy, why don't you go ahead and get us started? First one.
Well, Isaac is referred to his people as the emissary. This is the second time Penny Johnson Gerald plays a character who is in a relationship with someone called the emissary. The first was Cassidy Yates on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who married Ben Sisko, the emissary of the Bajoran prophets. What fun trivia is that?
Yeah, isn't that good? Yeah. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and hit the second bit of trivia there for us for part one?
absolutely. The building used as the planet Kalon filming location was also used in Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013. The address, 2000 Avenue of the Stars, Century City, Los Angeles, California, USA. Kalon office of Kalon Primary.
Pretty cool. I kind of want to go there, so that's kind of neat.
I know, right? What was that address? Wow.
Notable guest stars, of course, we get Victor Garber as Admiral Halsey, Graham Hamilton as Kalon Primary, and he's not the, so this isn't the last time we'll see him, of course. We also have Robert David Grant as Kalon Secondary. Of course, we have BJ Tanner, Marcus Finn, Kai Werner as Ty Finn, and Norm MacDonald as Yaphet. And I do remember a little, just got to mention this real quick too. I do remember that Mark Jackson had to go with all of the Kalon extras and spend some time with them to act Kalon and show them all the different moves and choreography and how they kind of hold themselves. I always thought that was kind of a cool thing. So, yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Admiral's Log synopsis there, Amy, for Identity Part 2.
Well, as the commandeered Orville and the massive Kalon fleet race towards Earth to exterminate all biological life, the ship's crew remains imprisoned in the shuttle bay. After Yaphet travels through the vents and retrieves a weapon, Borta shoots the two Kalon guards. Kelly and Gordon are then able to escape in a shuttlecraft in an attempt to recruit the nearby Krill as allies. Later, Yaphet and Ty travel through the vents and successfully transmit a warning signal to Earth before being discovered. Yaphet is left stunned while Ty is taken away. Pursued by a Kalon vessel, Kelly and Gordon reach Krill space and ask for their help. Kalon Primary, doubting Isaac's loyalty, orders him to terminate Ty. Isaac instead kills Primary, then deactivates all Kalon aboard the ship, including himself, with an EMP. The Orville crew retake the ship and join the ensuing battle, though Union forces are being overwhelmed. Krill reinforcements arrive, forcing the Kalon into retreat. After Yaphet revives Isaac, Admiral Halsey informs Mercer and Kelly that the Union Council may permanently deactivate him. Mercer and Kelly assert Isaac poses no danger, and Halsey allows him to remain aboard the Orville. Isaac reconciles with Dr. Finn and is resigned to never seeing his homeworld again.
All right, I got to ask our guest ambassador, Alyssa, I just want to get your initial reactions to seeing how Identity Part 2 ended.
I don't really remember. I just remember I loved like the 2-part episode and seeing it. Like it was the first. I don't want to say it was the first time that we really had an intense situation, but it was probably one of the most intense situations on the Orville. The comedy was stripped back, and it was a very long, like it was longer. It was more drawn out, and I liked that it involved everyone. Like when they talk later on about how if that exact crew hadn't been there at that exact moment, the Kalon would have taken over. And they talk about Dr. Finn and her kids, but it wasn't just them. Like Isaac did something. The kids did something. Kelly and Gordon went out into space. Yaphet. It was everybody involved and everyone had something to do. So watching that again, watching them even get the shuttle out, everybody had something that they did to make sure that happened.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into some trivia first here. Amy, why don't you go ahead and hit the first trivia here? We've got 2 here for Identity Part 2.
Well, not only does the 13-button salute refer to the 13 buttons on a Navy trousers, in the U.S. Navy slang, a 13-button salute refers to the act of removing the trousers so fast that all 13 buttons come undone immediately, usually prior to intercourse. As such, the use of the term by the Union for a ship that has been taken over by hostiles and under duress is a somewhat derogatory term for that crew's predicament, i.e., they're screwed.
Kyle, go ahead and hit us with the second bit of trivia here.
Absolutely. Penny Johnson-Gerald and Carlos Bernard previously appeared together in the first 3 seasons of 24.
And Carlos Bernard, of course, plays the fellow captain that unfortunately gets the reference to 13-button salute, but pays for it dearly. So, yeah, there you go. I loved Carlos Bernard in 24. He was great. Notable guest stars, of course, as I mentioned, Carlos Bernard is Captain Marcos. Victor Garber is Admiral Halsey. Graham Hamilton, of course, Kalon Primary. We have Nick Chinlund as Captain Dalek. And then we have the kids, BJ Tanner and Kai Warner. And Robert David Grant as Kalon Secondary and Norm McDonald as Yaphet. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and discuss. Let's go ahead and get into the discussion of Identity Part 1 and Identity Part 2. Amy, I want to start with you here. You want to obviously talk about these together, and I think it's a great idea to do this. Go ahead and get us started here.
Well, I really like how Isaac and these 2 episodes, we are now learning about his culture, his civilization. And it is difficult talking about it because of Unknown Graves is still in my mind. Because that just informs what's happening here. And so we are seeing this just horrendous, logical, not non-emotional. We are going to kill you. Our mind is made up. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's that logic. But again, what I said at the beginning with Isaac's logic still allows for compassion somehow. And so to see that between him and the rest of his culture is very, very interesting. And I think that's the influence that the crew has on Isaac, and that he's allowed the crew to influence him. And I love that.
Good points. Kyle, to you, Identity Part 1 and 2.
Probably the closest thing to Best of Both Worlds for the Orville, as far as the powerfulness of the 2 episodes.
Can you do me a favor? Kyle, can you do me a favor? Can you actually, for those that don't know, can you give us an idea of the comparisons to and what Best of Both Worlds, for those that may not know what that means?
Well, Best of Both Worlds being probably the most famous 2-part episode in maybe Star Trek history, where Picard gets captured by the Borg and becomes Locutus. And so it's really the Enterprise versus Picard. And there's some similarities between these 2 because they were such powerful episodes. And again, like in Best of Both Worlds, the Orville is fighting a friend who knows everything about them. And what's interesting here in a parallel is that you have Isaac, who is trying to find and understand humanity throughout the series, where Picard is turned into a machine, but it's his humanity that helps him kind of escape Locutus. And it's what Isaac has learned about humanity and caring for others that helps him rebel against the Kalon. And I think that's just so very cool and a unique twist on taking that story. But I mean, across the board, these are just two high impact episodes. The first episode is so emotionally heavy when you find out what the Kalon actually did to their creators. And
Yeah.
it's mind blowing. And then you have the second episode, which is this fantastic space battle, these really intense moments. And everybody in the crew kind of almost gets a moment to shine in Identity Part 2, whether including Ty and Yaphet having Yaphet having a hero moment in this episode too. And it's every little thing. One of my favorite things is too when the Krills show up and Gordon's flying one of their little strike ships.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
it's just great and it's fun. And then the ending is
I
just,
think doesn't he make a Top Gun reference, Kazansky or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. But
yeah.
and lastly, the ending is just so powerful because Isaac's alone, and he's kind of realizing it, and he still doesn't quite realize yet all the ramifications of what has happened and what it means for him. And he's the humanity that kind of shows out in him, even just a little bit when he's talking about taking the picture of Kalon, even though it's so far away, he's developing that map. It shows that he does understand what he's lost. And I think that's really powerful.
That's a good point. Alyssa, when I remember when as Union Federation here, and we were covering the Orville, and I remember like what you said when you first started watching, you're like, I don't know if this show's right for me, but it got you at episode 3 about a girl. That's when you realize that this show can be serious and tackle serious projects. And in the trivia earlier, or in the production notes, when it said to mention we want to make something for the fans, we all know that Seth is a huge Star Trek fan, and I felt like he's like, I'm sure in the writing room, he's like, I need our Best of Both Worlds part 1 and 2 here. I need something that's big. I need something that is interesting. And I remember the thing I was going to say earlier that I forgot. That was in the trivia or in the production notes, right? This was going to be in season 1, but they wanted to wait till season 2 so there could be more character development. And I think that was the smartest thing they could have done, Alyssa, was making sure that we cared about everyone. Because you mentioned everyone gets some type of like role in this, and that you kind of get a really good feel of what everyone's about. But I wanted to get your thoughts, of course, on overall on Identity Part 1 and 2.
I agree. I think saving it for season 2 was a great idea because there was a lot that happened in season 1, but there was even more that happened in season 2 to get us to care, like you said, more about the characters. And they kind of like not finish, but they kind of put some sort of closure on the Ed and Kelly like relationship drama in season 1. So to then end season 1 with, oh, by the way, Isaac betrays everyone, that kind of seems like it might come a little bit out of left field if they don't spend more time developing everybody. So I think that was a good decision to leave it for later.
Yeah, I agree. Was there anything about these 2 episodes that, because this is like right in the middle of season 2 here, because I remember when I saw these, I kind of felt like, okay, this is the Orville letting you know things get real here, because obviously the crew gets involved with this huge situation where humanity is at stake here. But I kind of also feel that they went all out on these 2 episodes to show like we're not just a Star Trek wannabe show. We are the Orville, and we are going to make a stamp in science fiction television. Did you ever get that type of feeling like I did, or am I overblowing this, Alyssa?
No, I think this is probably where I think a lot of people say that that's where they started, like not so much paying attention as realizing, oh, this is actually a real sci-fi show. And this was also the first time that really anything they did had major repercussions, I think, throughout the rest of the show. Like everything else was kind of started and ended in the course of that one episode. Like they would go visit a planet and then something bad would happen, but then they would either solve it or reach an end by the time the episode was over and then move on. And it was very rare that they had something like that was that big, that extended the entire length of a season and the rest of the show. And this was the first time that by the end of it, you realize, oh, there's another like race out in the galaxy trying to kill everyone. And everyone could have almost died at that point. So,
yeah, I think too that as you mentioned, the rating earlier, Amy, This is a 9.4. That's out of 10. That's really highly rated. And you and I in our I know that when you had a really great podcast that you guys did where you would go to your lowest rated, was it Star Trek episodes, and kind of like try to fix them or whatever. And we stole that idea for Highlander Blade of Kings, which has been a great little thing. But I don't know, there's much to fix about this episode at all.
Yeah, no.
Kyle.
I want to too with what Alyssa was saying about how moving these 2 episodes and not having it be the season finale. If it was the season finale for season 1, it has nowhere near the emotional impact that it has where it's at in season 2. And I think that was just the right decision. It was the emotional impact because we got that much more time with the characters. We got to get more of the Isaac Claire relationship too, which I think was a key aspect of this, and his relationship with her boys as well. And I think that just getting that little bit of extra time, having that emotional weight to these episodes really makes these 2 episodes that much more impactful.
You know what I also noticed too? You know how sometimes kids can be annoying in shows? Mm-hmm. Ty and his brother, I think, were great. Whoever's writing these kids, in addition to the kids doing a great job acting those characters, the writing has been great for them, I really think. And you also get the Ty wanting, Isaac to be the father figure too. That really kind of, especially that moment when, Isaac is ordered to kill him and he's like, no. And then immediately, like, does he take the head off the Kalon? I think he does it pretty quickly. But I just think the kids are great in the series, Amy.
Let me ask you, what's the change between when Isaac is leaving and Ty gives him the picture of everyone and he just drops it as he's walking away, and it's like dagger to the heart, kill me now. But from that moment to, yes, I'm not going to kill, what changed in Isaac?
I'm glad you answered that. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's when he's there and they kill that random guy and shoot him out into space, because and it's Isaac that steps up saying he is a useful crew member, and he mentioned something about his engineering abilities or something like that. I kind of get the feeling that's where things started to change. What do you think, Alyssa?
I think yes, I agree, but I also think that when Isaac had the picture, I think I've seen people debate like why he would have dropped it. And one person, or I think it might have been my sister, likes Isaac. That's her favorite. And I think she might have said that he has the ability to take pictures of things and to store things in his memory. So he might have just done that, dropped it, and he has it with him. And then the other option is he told the kids, I will not forget you. So he might have thought, why I don't need this. I'm not going to forget them.
Yeah, he doesn't understand sentimentality like we do.
Robot logic mind. He thinks he has all the information he needs. So.
Kyle, what say you?
I agree with what Alyssa says. He took a picture of it. I mean, it's in his database. He doesn't understand human sentiment yet. So he doesn't understand the meaning of what it was for Ty to give that to him. So to him, it's just another thing. He's got it in his memory bank. Why does he need it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good call. All right, let's go ahead and get in the next episode here, guys. Of course, we are discussing Isaac here on episode 215 of the Union Federation, where we're discussing all of the crew profiles, and Mark Jackson is awesome as Isaac. But let's go ahead and get into the Admiral's episode log. Hold on one second. There we go. Go ahead and hit us up with For Unknown Graves, right, Amy? What season are we in? 3?
Season 3, yes. Episode 7. So in flashbacks, the downfall of the Kalon's creators is depicted. After the Kalon's originally docile robotic servants begin disobeying orders, a software update gives them the ability to feel pain, which their masters widely abuse, and the robots rebel. In the present, to convince the matriarchal Genesi to join the Union, Kelly and Tala pose as captain and first officer. Meanwhile, the crew rescues cyberneticist Dr. Vilka and a peaceful Kalon named Timus from an abandoned planet. Vilka and her late father rewired Timus to give him a full suite of emotions. Timus shows deep regret for the Kalon's action. Claire convinces Isaac to undergo the procedure. It is successful, but he soon reverts to his original state due to being a later generation Kalon. Although he can be modified to make his emotions permanent, all of his memories would be erased. While he agrees to do this for Claire, she wants to preserve who he is. The Genesi appear willing to join the Union, but when they exhibit misandry towards the male crew. Oh, misandry? I don't know. Ed reveals the truth. The negotiations are threatened, but when Ed shows his continuing respect for Kelly, despite her infidelity, the Genesi agree to consider diplomatic relations. Lamar continually suffers traumatic injuries having sex with Tala. Though they initially resolve to make it work, his repeated injuries lead them to end their relationship. After Timus tells Charlie about the Kalon's history of slavery, she realizes that she cannot judge an entire race as evil and expresses a greater openness towards working with Isaac.
Right. We got a lot to dive into there in a minute. But first, let's go ahead and hit some trivia here. And go ahead and start with the first one there, Amy.
This episode's title, From Unknown Graves, is a quote from the abolitionist poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, The Witnesses, from his book, Poems on Slavery. Specifically, the final stanza, These are the woes of slaves. They glare from the abyss. They cry from unknown graves. We are the witnesses.
Oh, very cool. All right. Kyle, go ahead and hit us with the next one here.
This is the first appearance of the Genesi, who were previously mentioned in All the World is Birthday Cake in 2019. The name of the matriarchal species, the Genesi, sounds close to the word genesium, which refers to women's quarters in ancient Greece and Rome.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I remember when that's the episode, All the World's Birthday Cake, that we get our new security officer and talks about punching her captain in the nose or something like that. So, yeah. All right. So for our guest stars here, of course, for the entire first or third season, we had Ann Winters as Ensign Charlie Burke. We had Eliza Taylor as Dr. Vilka. We also had Sophia Brown as Captain Losha. Christopher Larkin played Timus. Graham Hamilton, he's back. He played K1. William R. Moss played Yan. Scott Spicer played Varel. And Elise Levisk played Wenda. That was the alien couple there. So there you go. All right. Let's go ahead and get the episode discussion. Amy, you wanted to definitely spend some time on this. I want to give you some time to cook, and for good reason. This was a good one to get into, and I rewatched this episode twice. So go ahead and take the table there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I loved the progression of where he was at the end of Identity of, yes, having compassion, understanding, and getting and repairing the relationship that he had with Claire and the boys. And she's on the verge of forgiving him and then seeing where it goes and then realizing, oh, I really do have emotions. Let's take this. And that discussion with her and Kelly about, is it okay to ask this? So their relationship is just so strong. And she says, yep, it's worth it. This is a line in the sand. This is a deal breaker for me. And Isaac deliberates, and that's fun to see that go through. And the brief amount of time that they have together with the emotions and was so tender and so hopeful for what could be a gorgeous, wonderful relationship, but then also the hope that this could help other Kalon. That was exciting to have that as well. It just really made me love Isaac and Mark Jackson again, chef's kiss, because how he portrays and that emotion that he was in the holodeck or, you know, uh, with Claire and him professing and being able to speak these emotions was profound.
If I remember correctly, was this the episode 2 where he sent her the red dress
Yes.
to wear?
The orange. Yeah.
The orange
Yeah.
dress. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
notes there. Kyle, give me your first reaction here to For Unknown Graves.
It was interesting to see the back history of the Kalon, and I think that was something that I was very intrigued by. The Claire-Isaac relationship and how it deals with as he gets emotions in this, and how they differed it so much from when Data got emotions in Star Trek, where Isaac didn't feel like he was necessarily overwhelmed by these emotions, but to be able to express it so beautifully and have, in a way, a little bit of control over those emotions too. I thought it was beautifully handled, and just to see that history, to see what led to the Kalons becoming what they are, and then to have that moment where it's like there might be a way to change the Kalons and have it all be in this one episode and be so powerful. It again, I've said this through the whole run. The writers on the Orville are freaking incredible. They have been some of the best writers in television in the last 10 to 15 years. They just get it, and they just do it in a way that translates across the board to everybody.
That's a good call. Alyssa, I want to get your thoughts on From Unknown Graves. First of all, do you think it was a good idea to spend some more time on this one? Because it's tough to watch sometimes.
Yes, it is. And there's so much going on in this episode. There's so many different plots happening all at the same time. There's one thing going on in a flashback. Some crew members are doing one thing, some are doing another thing. And yeah, I mean, like, that's to be expected. Life on board a starship. That's cool that there's so many different things going on at the same time. My opinion on Isaac getting emotions is a little bit different. I didn't really like it. Like, when it happened, I was thinking he's still Isaac, but he's losing like the way that he expresses himself. And I don't know, maybe I would have gotten used to it if it had stayed and he had gotten to kind of, for lack of a better word, mellow out some, because I think like the first wave of emotion is going to be a little bit overwhelming, and he's just experiencing these new things. But I think really all he got was the ability to express it in a way that Claire could maybe understand better, because it was clear by the end that he does care about her and that he does care about his friends and his crewmates. He was willing to give up everything that was himself that would make her happy. So I don't know that I liked Isaac getting emotions. The other thing is Tim is kind of, I'm not used to seeing a Kalon like that. So Tim has kind of creeped me out the entire episode. I wasn't sure like if he could be trusted. Maybe again, if I had seen more Kalon, if they had stuck with the let's teach the Kalon emotion storyline, I might have gotten used to it a little bit more, like with Data showing emotion. But I guess the other thing is I know they talk about, oh, this could help the Kalon, the giving them emotion so that they can feel. And I do agree that's a quick way to help the Kalon and maybe get them closer to their side. But I don't know why they don't consider that Isaac has grown even without that. And Timus makes note of that. He says that that's impressive, that you seem to feel the same emotions I do. You just haven't. I needed this and you didn't. So maybe another Kalon that could change like Isaac did.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that definitely. I agree. It's interesting too. When it comes to Timus, what I thought he did come. I get the creepy part too, but I'm also reminded of how important him telling the backstory and what happened with the Kalon and how they did their uprising and how that changes Charlie's opinion on Isaac. And I think that's a really nice moment at the end when Charlie comes up to Isaac, saying, hey, can I help you? And then Isaac's like, no, I'm smarter than you. I'm paraphrasing. He says, no, I don't need your help. But then Isaac is freaking Isaac, not having the emotions, understands what Charlie's trying to do. And he turns around. She's starting to leave after she kind of apologizes and says, no, I could use your help. That was a sweet moment, and you're wondering, like, yes, you could say Isaac is learning emotions and learning what people say and what they mean, and intentions. He's picking up on intentions and stuff like that. And I thought that was a very sweet moment and one of the more endearing moments for Isaac. And that, it also is one of the reasons why, we see Isaac and Charlie's relationship get repaired somewhat. And then Charlie ended up making the final sacrifice to help save everyone else towards the end of the season there. But I wanted to bring this slide back to the table here. This is where we get the alien race. I'm sorry, I don't remember if we know what their alien race is, where we get to see where the uprising starts and how I just thought it was really creepy how it reminds me of how some like nefarious things happen with businesses, how, and some people will say like, sometimes your Apple updates might feel this way, or your computer updates where they make these weird updates to do certain things. And this one ended up costing like all of these aliens their lives. And especially with that, basically a torture device that everyone was able to use against the Kalon. And I tell you, it was a brutal scene watching those two kids have fun. Torturing K1 in the way that they did. And it just, kids can be mean, but man, this was tough to watch. But the fact that the guy behind the counter knows that there's this risk and he doesn't really seem to care. He just wants to basically, it's all about the product and stuff like that. And I wanted to bring that to the table because I thought that was fascinating, because watching the uprising that the Kalon do reminds me of one of my favorite TV series and reboot TV series, Battlestar Galactica, where we get the Cylons, basically becoming self-aware and starting a very horrific battle against humans. And so if you're a fan of that, I'm sure you understand the parallels with that. So before we head out and we talk about Mark Jackson himself, I wonder if anyone else had any more comments on For Unknown Graves.
I think it was. I had one quick comment. I think one of the things too that's hard to watch about this episode, and you brought it up, Kevin, not only the scene where the kids are torturing K1, but just seeing how he's treated in general. When he first talks about going to school, and he kind of for the first time talks back and talks out of turn, and just how he's talked to as a thing and not something more. And then the other thing is too with this alien race, in some ways I hate to say it, but karma. You act like that, you treat things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right, but karma.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I just have to mention on the lighter side of things in this episode, in my opinion, one of the funniest Malloy moments is when the Genesi are all at the table and one of them is taking a liking to Ed and like touches his hand, how soft he is, and she wants to mate with him, and they say that he can't or whatever, and then like all of a sudden Malloy's like, I'll do it. One of the good ones there. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the next Orville shuttle mission. Let's talk about Mark Jackson, guy. This guy's great. What a wonderful job he has done with this character. He has a quote. It says, "I'm a big fan of sci-fi anyway, so I'm probably blinded to any possibilities of the Orville not doing well, because this is exactly the kind of show that I'd watch even if I wasn't in it." That's one of his quotes.
Nice.
Mark is a British actor who was born in Rotterdam and trained in the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. Mark Jackson is an English actor who has performed in many television, such as that Peter Kay thing and the Royal Today. He also performed in short projects in Peppermint, as well as The Kissing Booth. He describes himself as a huge fan of science fiction growing up, having read it since he was a child and always wanted to perform in Star Trek The Next Generation. There you go. My man. After season 2, Jackson worked on film about the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder in the military. A little bit of trivia here. Jackson was cast in the Orville on December 8th, 2016, after a fairly straightforward audition process. In the casting director's apartment in the Streatham district of London, England, where he read Isaac's lines on camera, Isaac was described simply as a featureless face with red eyes. McFarlane greatly enjoyed Jackson's taped performance And Fox twice tried to bring him to Los Angeles, California for screen test, but both attempts failed for unknown reasons. Regardless, Jackson was hired anyway 6 weeks later on the basis of a single audition tape, receiving the good news while stepping onto a plane for vacation to Barcelona, Spain. He says, I quote, I got offered the part after 6 weeks of suspense, he recalled in an interview, and quipped, there was much sangria that night. He moved to Los Angeles in January 1st, 2017, shortly after receiving the part, and co-star Scott Grimes helped him move into his new apartment. Mark goes on to say, I was leaving behind my fiance. I was leaving behind all my friends and family, so it was a mixed bag, but I was going to Hollywood, so that obviously a great thing to work on a crazy new show, which I guess you will have all seen now, which is great. It was a strange experience, but a great one in the end. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts on Mark Jackson, the person. I've actually had a chance to meet him briefly. I'll get in that in a minute. But Alyssa, our special guest here, I want to get your thoughts on Mark Jackson.
I don't know very much about him. I've never met him, but I do know that he is an artist as well, and that he has an art page on Instagram. So I think that's pretty cool that he's multi-talented.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Kyle?
I think it is utterly disgusting that every male lead on the Orville looks so damn good in a tuxedo. And a suit. But no, from everything I've heard, he's been great with the fandom. He's incredibly talented. To pull off what he did with Isaac, especially when they started using more of the holographic around him to make so he looks like himself, but still being Isaac. That's a tremendous acting job, and the tremendous actor. That takes a lot of talent, and it shows you how good of an actor he really is.
Amy?
He was there at STLV last August, and they had the Orville panel at the very end on Sunday. So he and everyone else was experiencing the convention. And so on Sunday, he was just so like humbled and was like, oh my gosh, you guys like us. And he was just so great to listen to on stage. And so that's really my only interaction with him, is just seeing it. But he was just so grateful and humbled and to be included, and was like, this is great, you guys, and just so gracious to the fans.
It's interesting you say that, because I met him just briefly at Dragon Con, where a group of our Orville costume group, there was like 4 or 5 of us, we all pitched in to get a group picture with him, the actors that played Bordis, Clyden, and Jay Lee's character,
Lamar.
And Lamar, yeah. And he actually took the time to shake all of our hands. I thought that was very, very nice. And he did a panel too that was really cool. Just seemed like a great guy. I'll share those pictures on a future episode here. But let's go ahead and get into the Isaac discussion here. We got little 3 topics here. Obviously, we got a lot to mention about the relationship for the rest of the crew, or his relationship with the crew Orville, the crew of the Orville. But I want to save that to the second question. The first question I have is how their character moments tie into the Orville universe as a whole. Well, we have a pretty darn good idea, because everyone almost got extinct because of Isaac and him turning heel on that. But there's other little things that we can dive into as well. But obviously, Isaac being having an impact on the whole universe is big. Alyssa, I want to start with you on that.
Well, like you said, he was very central, of course, to the whole Kaylon conflict. But as Ed and Kelly mentioned to Admiral Halsey, if it hadn't been Isaac, they would have sent someone else. And if it had been someone else, then Earth might have been destroyed. So the fact that Isaac saved them all was very important. And the fact that later on in Domino, he helps develop the weapon that eventually brings the Kaylon to their side. So, of course, Isaac has a major impact on the Orville's universe as a whole.
That's a good point there. Amy, what about you?
Yeah, going off what you're saying, Alyssa, like we really get to know the Kaylon as, a section in the quadrants. I'm probably using Star Trek terminology, but, here we have this significant alien race that is pretty much, superior until we got that weapon. So to have them, but to know that we can negotiate with them, especially at the end of Domino, but they become this important part of strategy within our universe. And it's all because of this Isaac, what you're saying, like how he's able to interact with the crew, which will lead us into the next discussion.
Kyle.
It's interesting because he had such a negative impact when you think about identity and almost causing the Kalon to destroy Earth. But he also brought the Kalon in and helped make peace with the Kalon at the end of the series. And you add into the fact that, this interspecies relationship he has with Claire and what that did to unite the Kalon with the Union. So it's interesting in that he has this dichotomy of he was both almost destroyed it and he brought it together.
It's interesting, Kyle, you reminded me of how we learn in Identity Part 1, how he's always reporting back to Kalon Primary and sharing the data that he has. And how the Kalon can't really understand what a practical joke is, I mean, he got he had a pretty funny one happen to him, but then he got Gordon back pretty well, of course, taking his leg. But I just thought it was interesting because what Kalon is taking with that information leads to their decision of like, yeah, we can't trust any living species anymore. We have to eradicate them. And it's not like, there is some similarities to the Borg in Star Trek Next Generation that we learned, but the Borg want to assimilate. They prefer to keep you alive so they can assimilate you and supposedly make you better and get whatever you want. But the Kalon, and straight up, they decide, no, we're going to try and kill everyone. Kyle.
You just brought up something that I find absolutely fascinating, Kevin, and it was something I was thinking about even as I was watching the episode again. When you're talking about Isaac sending all these reports back to Kalon Prime, I treat it almost like it's one of the reasons why I can't stand text messaging, because when we text somebody or email somebody, we tend to put our own emotions, or people read their own emotions of what you're writing. Mm-hmm. In this case, Isaac's getting that emotional experience, even though he may not realize it or fully understand it. He's getting that. That part didn't relate into the messages and reports he's sending back to Kalon Prime. All they're getting is data. Isaac was getting so much more. And I think that's really important to think about when you talk about it. And I just want to give you props for bringing that up.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting dichotomy there. So, all right, let's get into the second question here, the relationship with the rest of the Orville crew. So obviously we know what happens with Claire, and I remember, and I'm going to start this off, guys. I remember going, how is this going to work? This ain't going to work. This isn't going to last. No way is it going to last. No. But it did. And I actually found myself rooting for them and supporting their relationship and wanting to see more. And it made me root for this couple, even after, we're like, how's this going to work with what happened during Identity Part 1 and 2? And, but I think there's another important part of this too, is his relationship with the kids. The kids are so important in this part of the relationship. And I also feel too that him learning little things that people, want to learn, about humans and how they act, kind of reminds me of Data a little bit when it comes to that. But I think when it comes to Claire, I was proven wrong. And when they ended up getting married at the end of season 3, I'm just like, yeah, this is cool. This is great. So your thoughts, let's go ahead and go to you, Alyssa. Your thoughts on the relationship with the rest of the Orville crew that Isaac has.
I like the relationship between Isaac and John Lamar.
Yeah.
That they seem to have like a buddy kind of relationship throughout the entire, more so when John becomes chief engineer, because they work together all the time. And then John doesn't have Gordon to bounce off of anymore, so he has Isaac. And I think that's pretty cool. At first, Isaac is like, I'd be happy to tell Commander Grayson that you're not as smart as she thinks you are. And then he takes it back later on. But I thought it was very impressive that John was one of the ones that consistently stood by Isaac throughout everything, throughout all of season 3. He was one of the ones that backed him up all the time. Even when other people were like, he's a Kalon, Gordon and Bortus weren't sure about him. I don't know why John wasn't Isaac's best man, honestly. I don't know why it came down to Gordon and Bortus, but I like the friendship between Isaac and John Lamar. I think that one's very fun to watch.
The only thing that it went wrong in a hilarious moment was when he gives bad relationship advice to Isaac. And boy, does John hear about that from Claire in front of everyone in the engineering. Funny scene. John Lamar, you get your ass down here. I thought that was funny. Amy, I want to ask you the relationship with Isaac and the rest of the Orville crew discussion. First of all, did it surprise you that they kept the relationship going with Clara?
I really loved it because I liked them at the beginning. I'm like, this is so different. Where is this? How can this go? So I was so sad, after Identity and that betrayal. And so when they did start working on it together, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Yeah. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to point out, probably more so with Isaac than anyone else on the crew, is that there is stronger emotions with the crew's interaction with Isaac. And I think in part because of that betrayal. And you pointed out with Lamar that he was the one who didn't. But the one that I really wanted to point out was with Charlie. And even though we got such a short amount of time with her, she was the one that was most affected and carried this anger and
she was brutal towards him.
Just vile towards him. And so that like strong reaction, like I feel, as you mentioned, like Bordas and Gordon had the same thing. Just this strong reaction towards Isaac. And when Charlie to finally come around was just really beautiful, and sort of that end note of, oh yeah, of course Claire is going to forgive, because they had that relationship. So it just sort of signifies the entire crew completely forgiving Isaac once Charlie did. And so that interaction I really loved with Isaac and the crew.
Good point. Kyle.
There's a couple of things with this. I want first on the Claire relationship. What I love so much about that relationship is that the fault wasn't always in Isaac. There were episodes, and when they had problems, you want to look at Claire and go, he's a machine. You have to remind yourself of this. And there are times when she did, and times when she didn't. And there were times when you're like, come on, Claire, give Isaac a little more leeway here. You're expecting too much for what he is and what he's still developing. So I thought that was a really good thing. It wasn't always Isaac one-sided. But what I love about it with him and the rest of the crew is, and I think this is why the crew were so bonded to Isaac before Identity, because they all felt like they were helping him get his humanity and learn and find emotion. So they all felt like they had given a piece of themselves to him in different ways because they were trying to help him grow. So when his betrayal happens in Identity, that's why for some of them, it just rips it to their core. And for others, they stood by him because they believed in what they had taught him and what he had done. And you see that in season 3 as things play out, and some of them come back around. Not everybody does, but
yeah,
that was what made it so interesting. And that's what made his connection to the crew so much more powerful, because they all felt like they had given something to Isaac to help him understand humanity and become more human in his own right.
That's a good point, Kyle. And you just reminded me of something too, that I think that when it comes to, and I guess it kind of goes back to the first topic here of how that ties into the rest of the Orville universe, but is relationship based here, is the prejudice, and I'm sure some people still might have towards Kalon in general. And, it was a tough watch when all the crew just hated him and he ended up committing suicide or deactivation, and it was an interesting topic to talk about how that affected things. But I just want to go back to the kids real quick. I thought it was a very sweet moment where, Claire is talking to Isaac and they have the kids there and she wants to announce their relationship. They're like, yeah, we knew, but it was a very sweet where the older brother goes, yeah, we just want you to be happy, Mom, and support you. And that's just cool. I mean, I don't know if a lot of kids would be like that, so you can obviously tell they respect their mom, and obviously they respect Isaac, at least at that time they did. So before things went sideways. But it was a nice character moment between them as well. Okay, guys, let's get into the final question I have here. Is if we had more episodes with the character, please let there be a season 4. IMDb wants to do it. If we're already letting us tease, maybe we will. I don't know. But where would you like to see Isaac's story arc go? Now, I did want to start off by saying in the last episode with Dr. Claire Finn, and since these two are now an item because they got married on the season finale of season 3, I really had a tough time figuring out what would happen with these people as a couple, where they would go with these characters. What would happen with Claire? Would she stay the doctor on the Orville, or what going on there? Would there be an ambassadorial type of role maybe for Isaac to help the human side or alien side of things, of trying to work with the Kalons in general? I don't know. Does the relationship last? I don't know. I had trouble trying to figure that out. Kyle, I'm going to go to you first here. What would you like to see from Isaac? Because you have to kind of say Isaac and Claire, and now they're a couple. So, well,
you nailed it on the head, Kevin. Because I said last week with Claire, it felt like they really hit the apex, and their story ended. And it's for them especially, it's a new chapter. And I think it depends on what direction they take with Claire and Isaac. Are they still on the Orville, or are they somewhere else now? And I think one of the things that would be interesting with Isaac, obviously, there's all the story to tell about him still growing his relationship with Claire, what it's like when they're married. But I would really like to kind of see more of Isaac teaching the Kalon. I think if you're going to go somewhere, that's maybe the way you go with it, because you have all the Kalon show, basically the entire Kalon show up at the wedding, and here they are now with a changed mindset, and Isaac's really the one here to teach them. And how does Isaac deal with that responsibility, especially because he was shunned by the Kalon? He was kicked out, and now he's back in as accepted, and then maybe in a way almost looked at as a new primary in a fashion as well, or something different for the Kalon. And how does Isaac affect the Kalon going forward?
That's a good call. Yeah, I have another comment I want to make on that, but Alyssa, I want to go to you here. What do you want to see from Isaac and Claire going forward? What would be an interesting story arc for them?
I mean, what Kyle said was pretty much what I was going to say. I would be interested to see Isaac because obviously the Kalon are now in the Union. They're not used to this. They're not used to interacting with so many biological species. Isaac is. So Isaac could teach them, and Isaac can also teach the biologicals about the Kalon. So he's kind of that bridge between the two. He has basically two families now, and he's the bridge between the two of them.
That's a good point. Yeah. Amy, what say you? What do you want to see from Isaac and Claire Finn? Does Isaac change his name? Does he have a last name? Is he Isaac Finn now? I don't know.
Yeah, he should be. He needs a last name. As you were talking about, well, if we say what's going to happen to Isaac, it's Claire as well. Or if we say what happens to Claire, it's Isaac as well. And yeah, it needs to come to a point of, is it going to be Isaac the ambassador and Claire follows Isaac? Or is Claire still going to be chief medical officer and Isaac, goes her route?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then, Kevin, when you were talking about their relationship, the first thing in my mind was like, does Isaac age? Where is this going to be 20 years where Claire is now, I don't know, 60, late 60s, 70s, and Isaac is a spring chicken? So there's that dynamic that they could explore, some
it's like Immortals and Highlander. If you're immortal and you married a non-immortal person, things get weird after a while. So yeah.
Yeah. So a lot to explore.
Okay. So the first thing I thought of that I would like to see from Isaac is I would like to see what kind of father he's going to be. Because I'm a stepdad myself, and it's been one of the most wonderful things that's happened to me. And I would love to kind of see where that goes. But then I was just like, okay, because my dad is a stepdad to me. So, and I've talked to other stepdads too, and other fathers of, the kids. So my question is, who does Isaac go to about parenting advice? Well, I'm not going to step on what I would in the upcoming episode with Ed, but Ed's a father now. I'll give my thoughts on that later of what I would like to see come from that. But maybe we need a married couple or a single father situation or something that he can bounce fatherly advice of, because I know he's not going to Lamar for that. So,
Right.
and I don't think some other people had the best parenting as well, but I would love to see where he would be with a father and what he would do with the kids, because I think that's really, really important. Maybe there's an episode where he sticks up for them and something happens or something like that, because those kids are great. I don't want to see them go anywhere.
Yeah.
I hope that they stay on there. But I will mention I have thoughts about where Ed might do now that Ed's a father, and I'll share that later when we do the Ed Mercer episode. So yeah. Well, all right, guys. So let's go ahead and wrap things up here. We are, of course, discussing Isaac here on episode 215 of the Union Federation. We're talking about the Orville crew profile. Let's go ahead and get our final thoughts. Alyssa, you are our special guest here. You okay? You're not too nervous? Having fun here talking Orville?
Oh yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Give me your final thoughts on Isaac and any more thoughts you might have on the episodes that we discussed.
Well, when I saw Isaac in the very first episode, I didn't really think he was going to be much of anything. I knew he was a robot, but I didn't know what to expect from that. And then especially like near the beginning of season 1, he didn't have too much to do. So I just thought he was just going to be there for like almost comedic purposes. And if they needed, major scientific information that only a computer's brain could do, that would be Isaac. I didn't realize that he was going to be so important to the story and so integral to everything and such a fan favorite, and became one of my favorites as well. So that was not something I expected when we were first introduced to that robot standing with everybody on the bridge and first Kalon. Yeah, they didn't really give much explanation and I didn't know what to expect, but it definitely wasn't this. So yeah. And then just to see the whole story of the Kalon play out, it's very creepy, especially now when the robots are coming out and it's saying, oh, this will be your servant and it will do your laundry and vacuum your floor and make your food. And I'm like, I've seen this. Just put a pain receptor in it and we have the Kalon. So maybe watch out.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Kyle, let's go to you here. Give me your final thoughts on Isaac, Mark Jackson.
Again, in ways I agree with Alyssa. A character, when they first introduced him, just felt like he was going to be lined into a role. And they took him and ran with him in a direction I don't think anybody could have ever predicted. I think when Identity happened, people were in shock. I think even the Claire situation changed everything. And people just, again, I come back to the Orville. You look at Bortus, you look at what they did with Isaac, 2 characters that could have been so one note, and they just expanded them and made them so brilliant. And to have this character with the relationships he had, the internal turmoil he had, the emotions he went through at the beginning of season 3 to the point where he deactivates himself. And they played it so well to where it felt like it was a machine reaction, but there were still emotions behind it. So it was just so well done, and props to Mark Jackson for just doing a phenomenal job with a character that is hard to pull off when you can't really truly show full emotion and your face is covered.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how well Mark Jackson shows emotion, even though technically they don't have emotion, but we see it. The body language is great. Amy, let's finish up with you here. Let's get your final thoughts on Isaac, Mark Jackson.
Yeah. Oh, you guys have just said it best. He is a character that I didn't know that I was going to, connect with so much. Because, you can't see him. All you can see are the motions. And he moves like so gracefully, but yet stiff. It's fascinating to watch him. And then when we get to see him interact on the holodeck with Claire, just wonderful. And so we get that both sides, that just we see him 360, and what he represents in terms of this alien race as the Kalon, and what that brings to the universe overall is just remarkable. And I am in love with Isaac. He's such a great character and so important to the crew. This has been so wonderful talking about him today.
Yeah, and I just want to give Mark Jackson some props again, because I love the fact that with the simulator or holodeck, as we still call it, that he gets to be himself. You get to see Mark's face and you get to see his reactions. What I find interesting too is that when he is Isaac in the human form, Mark does a great job of like not showing that emotion, and just being a robot, but in human form. And I think that is also very entertaining, and, taking things literally, like, let's clear the table, and he knocks the whole table down, little things like that. But I think it must have been great for Mark. And I would ask him this if I ever had a chance of being able to be Isaac, but as Mark Jackson. And especially, when he gets to go to Earth with, Lasting Impressions? What was it?
With Carly, where he went to Earth with Carly too, which
Yeah,
made it for a very interesting episode.
Yeah, so he's as a human down there, and I thought there were some great scenes with him as well, which I thought was awesome. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead. This is a Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN, and the next episode is Commander Kelly Grayson, played by Adrian Palicki. Episode
Now,
216, Union Federation. Yes.
Yes. Alyssa, would you like to guess what our episodes are?
If you already know, because I was already told, but those were the episodes that I guessed. So
okay,
I think I got all of them right, including which one would be the honorable mention and which ones would be talked about. So
see, Alyssa's on top of it. Now, Alyssa, I know you're looking forward to this one specifically, right?
Yes, that is true.
We'll go into that reason on the next episode. So make sure you guys check it out. And speaking of the episodes, the ones that we're going to be highlighting are season 2, episode 13, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Season 3 episode 5, Tale of Two Topas. And the honorable mention is going to be season 1, episode 12, Mad Idolatry, otherwise known as the Cult of Kelly. So make sure you guys, and I love how that carried out throughout the whole series. I thought that was great. So make sure you guys check back with us for the Orville. And like I said, this is the 10 episode limited series. We're talking about all of the Orville crew members. This is the Fandom Podcast Network. Hit us on that QR code there on YouTube. Take us straight to our website. Amy, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. You are, of course, the co-founder of the BQN. What is happening over on the BQN?
Well, we are still going strong with our Trexperts quiz weekly, and the view screen is still going on. So catch us over there on YouTube at BQN Podcast. And of course, we've got our podcast going on. I'm going to be starting back up to All Good Things once the view screen ends pretty soon. So we'll be doing that. You can find me out there on our Facebook group page and on Blue Sky at Counselor Amy.
Awesome. Kyle, how can we get a hold of you, sir?
Well, first of all, before we do anything, I want to thank our special guest, Alyssa, as one of the founders of the network. You've been so great on this show. In fact, Kevin messaged me during the show. You've been so great, and he's so thankful you're coming back. He is going to take your turn in cleaning the pee corner for you.
Thank you.
No worries. No, we don't want our guest ambassador cleaning up that corner. So yeah, it's on me this week.
Bus. Of course, you can find me all over the Fandom Podcast Network with all of our great pages, including our great page on Facebook at Fandom Podcast Network. And if you want to find me personally, you can find me on Facebook, Kyle Wagner. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom. And you can find me on Blue Sky at AKyleW as well.
Awesome. Alyssa, our guest ambassador, how can we find you? And first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to having you for next week.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I've loved talking about the Orville and Isaac. He is one of my favorites, so I'm so glad I got to do this episode. You can find me on Instagram at Space Girl Cosplay.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, you can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Blue Sky. We are at Fan Pod Network. Union Federation is also on X and Instagram. And please also join our Union Federation Facebook group too as well. We have a lot of great discussion for Orville and Star Trek there as well. My name is Kevin. You can find me on Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials, which include X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd. And I'm also on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. So yeah. Anyway, guys, also too, another way you can support us is on TeePublic. You can get the cool Union Federation podcast T-shirt like the one I'm wearing here. You can choose your color. But also we have our shirts from all of our other networks shows on there as well. And if you purchase one of our Fandom Podcast Network shirts, we get a little kickback. Appreciate the help there if you can. And so make sure you check us out. Again, Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on. Looking forward to having you next week.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right, guys. Until next week, guys, as we always say, live long and prosper. And without a doubt, we are the weirdest ship in the fleet. We will see you next week.